Pathé or Pathé Frères is the name of various French businesses that were founded and originally run by the Pathé brothers of France starting in 1896. In the early 1900s, Pathé became the world's largest film equipment and production company, as well as a major producer of phonograph records. In 1908, Pathé invented the newsreel that was shown in cinemas prior to a feature film. Today, Pathé is a major film production and distribution company, owns a great number of cinema chains across Europe but mainly in France, including 66% of the Les Cinémas Gourmand Pathé, a joint venture between Pathé and the Gourmand Film Company, and several television networks across Europe. It is the second oldest still operating film company in the world, predating Universal Studios and Paramount Pictures, second only to the French Gourmand Film Company Studio. History. The company was founded as Société Pathé Frères in Paris, France on 28 September 1896 by the four brothers Charles, Émile, Théophile and Jacques Pathé. During the first part of the 20th century, Pathé became the largest film equipment and production company in the world, as well as a major producer of phonograph records. The driving force behind the film operation was Charles Pathé, who had helped open a gramophone shop in 1894 and then established a phonograph factory at Chartres on the western outskirts of Paris. As these became successful, he saw the opportunities offered by new means of entertainment and in particular by the fledgling motion picture industry. Having decided to expand the record business to include film equipment, Charles Pathé oversaw a rapid expansion of the company. To finance its growth, he took the company public under the name Compagnie Générale des Établissements Pathé Frères Phonographies and Cinematographies in 1897, and its shares were listed on the Paris Stock Exchange. In 1896, Mitchell Mark of Buffalo, New York, may have been the first American to import Pathé films to the United States, where they were shown in the Vitascope Theatre. In 1902, Pathé acquired the Lumière brothers' patents and then set about to design an improved studio camera and to make their own film stock. Their technologically advanced equipment, new processing facilities built at Vincennes, and aggressive merchandising combined with efficient distribution systems allowed them to capture a huge share of the international market. They first expanded to London in 1902 where they set up production facilities and a chain of movie theatres. By 1909, Pathé had built more than 200 movie theatres in France and Belgium, and by the following year they had facilities in Madrid, Moscow, Rome and New York City plus Australia and Japan. Slightly later, they opened a film exchange in Buffalo, New York. Prior to the outbreak of World War I, Pathé dominated Europe's market in motion picture cameras and projectors. It has been estimated that at one time, 60% of all films were shot with Pathé equipment. In 1908, Pathé distributed Excursion to the Moon by Segundo de Chaumin, an imitation of Georges Méliès's A Trip to the Moon. Pathé and Méliès worked together in 1911. Georges Méliès made a film Baron Munchausen's Dream, his first film to be distributed by Pathé. Pathé's relationship with Méliès soured, and in 1913 Méliès went bankrupt, and his last film was never released by Pathé. Innovations worldwide, the company emphasized research, investing in such experiments as hand-colored film and the synchronization of film and gramophone recordings. In 1908, Pathé invented the newsreel that was shown in theaters prior to the feature film. The news clips featured the Pathé logo of a crowing rooster at the beginning of each reel. In 1912, it introduced 28mm non-flammable film and equipment under the brand name Pathéscope. Pathé News produced cinema newsreels from 1910 up until the 1970s when production ceased as a result of mass television ownership. In the United States, beginning in 1914, the company's film production studios in Fort Lee, New Jersey produced the extremely successful serialized episodes called The Perils of Pauline. By 1918, Pathé had grown to the point where it was necessary to separate operations into two distinct divisions, with Émile Pathé as chief executive. Pathé Records dealt exclusively with phonographs and recordings, while brother Charles managed Pathé Cinema, which was responsible for film production, distribution, and exhibition. 1922 saw the introduction of the Pathé Baby home film system using a new 9.5mm film stock, which became popular over the next few decades. In 1921, Pathé sold off its United States motion picture production arm, which was renamed Pathé Exchange, and later merged into RKO Pictures, disappearing as an independent brand in 1931. Pathé sold its British film studios to Eastman Kodak in 1927 while maintaining the theatre and distribution arm. Nathan to parity, Pathé was already in substantial financial trouble when Bernard Nathan took control of the company in 1929. Studio founder Charles Pathé had been selling assets for several years to boost investor value and keep the studio's cash flow healthy. The company's founder had even sold Pathé's name in Rooster trademark to other companies in return for a mere 2% of revenues. Nathan had the bad luck to take charge of the studio just as the Great Depression convulsed the French economy. Nathan attempted to steady Pathé's finances and implement modern film industry practices at the studio. Nathan acquired another film studio, Société des Ciné-Romans, from Arthur Bernda and Gaston Leroux, which enabled Pathé to expand into projector and electronics manufacturing. He also bought the Fournier chain of motion picture theaters and rapidly expanded the chain's nationwide presence. The French press, however, attacked Nathan mercilessly for his stewardship of Pathé. Many of these attacks were anti-Semitic. Pathé Nathan did well under Nathan's guidance. Between 1930 and 1935, despite the world economic crisis, the company made 100 million francs in profits, and produced and released more than 60 feature films. He resumed production of the newsreel Pathé News, which had not been produced since 1927. Nathan also invested heavily into research and development to expand Pathé's film business. In 1929, he pushed Pathé into sound film. In September, the studio produced its first sound feature film, and its first sound newsreel a month later. Nathan also launched two new cinema-related magazines, Pathé Review and Actualités Féminines, to help market Pathé's films and build consumer demand for cinema. Under Nathan, Pathé also funded the research of Henry Creation, who developed the anamorphic lens. Nathan expanded Pathé's business interests into communications industries other than film. In November 1929, Nathan established France's first television company, Télévision Bed Nathan. A year later, he purchased a radio station in Paris and formed a holding company to run what would become a burgeoning radio empire. But in 1935, Pathé went bankrupt. In order to finance the company's continued expansion, Pathé's board of directors voted in 1930 to issue shares worth 105 million francs. But with the depression deepening, only 50% of the shares were purchased. One of the investor banks collapsed due to financial difficulties unrelated to Pathé's problems, and Pathé was forced to follow through with the purchase of several movie theater chains it no longer could afford to buy. Although the company continued to make a profit, it lost more money than it could bring in. The collapse of Pathé led French authorities to indict Bernard Nathan on charges of fraud. Nathan was accused of financing the purchase of the company without any collateral, of bilking investors by establishing fictitious shell corporations, and negligent financial mismanagement. Nathan was even accused of hiding his Romanian and Jewish heritage by changing his name. Nathan was indicted and imprisoned in 1939. A second indictment was brought in 1941, and he was convicted shortly thereafter. He was freed in September 1942. The company was forced to undergo a restructuring in 1943 and was acquired by Adrien. Over the years, the business underwent a number of changes, including diversification into producing programs for the burgeoning television industry. During the 1970s, operating theaters overtook film production as Pathé's primary source of revenue. In the late 1980s, Italian financier Giancarlo Parotti tried to make a bid for Pathé, even taking over Canon and renaming it Pathé Communications in anticipation of owning the storied studio. Parotti's shady past, however, raised enough eyebrows in the French government that the deal fell through. It turned out to be a fortunate decision, as Parotti later took over Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and merged it with his Pathé Communications group to create MGM Pathé Communications in 1990, only to lose it in a bankruptcy in late 1991. Jérôme Asidou in 1990 charges, a French conglomerate led by Jérôme Asidou, took control of the company. As a result of the deregulation of the French telecommunications market, in June 1999, Pathé merged with Vivendi. The exchange ratio for the merger fixed at 3 Vivendi shares for every 2 Pathé shares. The Wall Street Journal estimated the value of the deal at $2.59 billion. Following the completion of the merger, Vivendi retained Pathé's interests in British Sky Broadcasting and Canal Satellite, a French broadcasting corporation, but then sold all remaining assets to Jérôme Asidou's family-owned corporation, Fournier SA, which changed its name to Pathé. Sectors. The sectors in which Pathé operates today are cinema, production, distribution to theaters and homes, the international management of a catalogue of more than 500 films, movie theaters, Europalaces, see also, movie theaters in the Netherlands, cable and satellite television networks, TMC Comedy, Cuisine.tv, Voyage. The Conseil Supérieur de l'Audiovisuel retained 3 of the projects of the group for digital terrestrial television, TMC, Comedy, and Cuisine.tv. International distribution. Outside of France, Pathé releases their film library on VHS or DVD. Other distributors like 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment in the UK distributed Pathé films for VHS, DVD release. In the UK, 20th Century Fox and Warner Brothers releases upcoming films by Pathé theatrically. Films distributed by Pathé include 127 Hours, 99 Francs, Adulthood, The Air I Breathe, Alexander, Ask the Dust, Asterix and Obelix Take on Caesar, Asterix and Obelix, Mission Cleopatra, Asterix at the Olympic Games, Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery, Beauty and the Beast, Be Kind Rewind, Black Book, Black Christmas, Blood, The Last Vampire, Pride and Prejudice, Broken Embraces, Centurion, Chicken Run, The Cottage, Crash, The Descent Part 2, The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, Eden Lake, Enemy at the Gates, Florence Foster Jenkins, The Fox and the Child, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, The Goods, Live Hard, Sell Hard, Hottie and the Naughty, The Illusionist, Jack and the Cuckoo Clock Heart, Jackie and Women's Kingdom, Jane Eyre, James and the Giant Peach, Japaloop, Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, Lockout, LOL, Lost in Translation, Love Labour's Lost, Lucy, The Magic Roundabout, Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom, Marie Antoinette, Memento, Mr. Nobody, No One Lives, Oceans, Philomena, The Player, Pride, Rescue Dawn, Rush, The Scouting Book for Boys, Savages, Selma, Slumdog Millionaire, Son of the Mask, Suffragette, Thunderpants, Tie-Tough, Topsy-Turvy, Trance, Twixt, Two Brothers, The Virgin suicides. Viceroy's house. What just happened? Why I did eat my father. Youth without youth. Zarafa.